Shane Eves, CEO of Peninsula Village. Welcome.
Right. Thank you, Mark.
To Business Insider.
Thank you.
Tell me what Peninsula Village does, and then we'll go into it a bit.
Okay. Peninsula Village has been there since about 1975. Community organisation that started with some very important people in the community developing out of a pensioners association. Started off with 48 beds, and today we have 283 residents under care, and we have about another 130 residents that are in independent living with us. Okay. So we're a not-for-profit community organisation that's been serving the peninsula for 30 plus years. Employ about 305 people, and we're probably the biggest employer down on the Woy Woy Peninsula.
Okay. And an industry under enormous pressure, government pressure.
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple of things with aged care. It's not well regarded. The persona of aged care isn't pretty, which doesn't help us. There's only bad news stories that you hear about fires or poor care, which hinders us. But our biggest issue is that the Commonwealth, we're funded by the Commonwealth. They limit our funding, they limit the amount of care we can give.
Well, in effect, even worse, reduce it.
Well, currently, what's happening going forward in 2012-13, there will be no increase to aged care providers. There will be a reduction in our funding model, which means we're meant to give the same amount of care, but we're going to get less dollars. So, you know, we have, like any other business, nearly a 3% increase in our salaries and wages is locked into an even price bargaining agreement. We've all got CPI increases about 2%, electricity, all of those things. And at the end of the day, I'm not getting any bigger increase in my funding, and I'm meant to deliver the same. And I don't dictate the price, the Commonwealth dictates the price, so we're limited in what we can do.
So where do you guys go? What, do you look for growth? Do you?
Well, one of the things that's happened with aged care is because it's been stagnant for some time, there's not a lot of people building because of government regulation or reduced funding. We have very good occupancy. The national average is about 92%, we run at about 98%. So the product is good. There is limitations on what you can do though. The government's agenda too, and I don't want to get too political, is to keep you in your home longer. Their agenda is to have community care packages that come to you in the home because it's cheaper for them to look after you in your home. I'm costly. In a previous life I ran an acute hospital, and I can tell you the amount of money that I got for somebody that had a stroke is nearly 4 times the amount of money that I currently get to look after someone in the residential care, which is basically their home.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So what drives you on? Where's the passion?
Yeah, okay. I suppose I'm fairly new to aged care, but I think one of the things that attracted me to it is it's community board. We've got a lot of community goodwill. A lot of our directors are all voluntary. But I think one of the passions that drives me is these people have been worthwhile citizens in the community. They're either returned servicemen or women. They've been, they ran the Leamington Drives. These people are 80 plus. They've done it hard, been through depressions and things like that. And I think the passion is that we're giving them some respect and looking after them because they can't look after themselves anymore. They've had strokes, the family can't look after them. And I think that's the thing that gives us some passion because it's about caring for everybody. And as I said, I don't want to get political, but the government's basically saying, well, you know, you're 85, not out, had the stroke, you might have served in the war, but I'm not going to give you any more money for the funding, Shane, you know, and you just do the best you can.
And you're not a serious voter, you know?
No.
There's no attention.
No.
We won't go there.
but I mean, the opposition's not standing up and ranting and raving either.
No. So,
and that's not the, I wouldn't say a stigma, but it's the perception of aged care. You know, it's not a pretty business because, you know, we need to be showered, we need to go to the toilet, and if you can't do it, we've got to help you. And it makes it hard.
And you are a major employer.
Yes, we are. Yeah, we are. Significant employer. And staffing is an issue. Good staff, getting good staff is an issue. Because don't get me wrong, you know, basic carer probably gets $18 or $19 an hour for looking after people that are doing the human things. But you can go and work somewhere else and get $18, $19 and not have to do those things. So you've really got to look for staff that are community orientated or committed to aged care. And one of the things that we've done at Peninsula Village, we've formed a very strong relationship with TAFE. We've probably had about 110 people in our organisation go through one form or another training. And we've also, in the last 6 months, developed traineeships and we've had 8 trainees go through, and we're going to employ 7 of those, and we've got another lot of trainees starting next month. So we're employing our own. Because what we've found is some of the other RTOs, they do the short course, they come along and they've got no skills. So this way we're really creating an environment to train our own and make sure they're giving the care that we want.
Because in every sense, this is a growing industry that you're in.
It certainly is. It certainly is. You and I will be there one day.
Indeed.
And we will have different demands to the people that are currently there. And there will be expectations, you know. We'll want hi-fi, internet,
wireless. Where do I plug my pad
where do
into?
I get my Chardonnay with my meal? All of those sort of things will happen. Where the expectations currently, because of the generation that's there, they're the ones that have done it hard. Through depression.
They are the ones that have prepared it for us.
That's right. That's right.
Indeed.
So our challenges in a market that is dominated by government funding, with very low margins, well, basically there might be none, is how do we redevelop or build new facilities, those sort of things. Because
like you say, that underdevelopment doesn't lead to increased value of what has been developed, it just puts more pressure on it.
True, Mark. We've got 3 facilities, but our high level care building's nearly 30 years old. It's not a bad facility, don't get me wrong, but our expectations going forward won't be to share accommodation, so I need to build something new. To build something new, I use all my capital like any other business, but I'm not really going to get any increase in spending that capital because I'm really just replacing old stock with new stock. But that's what the industry needs, and that's what people's expectations are about.
Indeed. And on the lighter side, I understand you have a debutante ball.
Oh yeah, look, we do a lot of things for our residents because they're normal people. They need some activities. And last year we had a debutante ball for our lady residents, and it was very emotive. There were some ladies there that have been through the depression. The family couldn't afford them to do their deb, or they might have married young and had children, weren't able to do their debutante, and there was some excitement about the village. They all dressed up, you know, the boys put on the tuxedos, we had the town cry there, and it was really an occasion to celebrate these wonderful women in their 80s or 90s. I danced with a lady that's 94, and she wanted to dance all night. So, you know, it's just about enjoying themselves. We do a lot of things, like a lot of males, and we're hopeless in aged care, we isolate. I with the Umina Football Club last year, we took some of the isolated blokes to the footy. Pie, beer, watch the footy.
Get 'em out again.
Pretty normal type of stuff. But one of the other things, advantages that we've got, is that we've got about 55 volunteers, and it's fantastic to have a community base that will actually volunteer to actually do things. You know, they'll come and read to people or take them somewhere or do something. And it's just wonderful being part of a community.
Actually, just on that volunteer, you may have seen an article, you may not have, that we ran. There is now an organisation, state government initiative to reward volunteers for their time. So across that, that's a cool thing. That's a cool thing.
And it's good. You know, there is, you know, one of our volunteers, he's 83 or whatever, plays snooker, plays cards with the residents. He enjoys himself. Keeps him active.
Indeed. We all need that. If you could go back and take a bit of knowledge you've got now about aged care to that point before you start, or before you moved out of your acute hospital, and said, hey, I wish I knew.
Yeah, look, I wish I knew. I knew there was compliance and regulations, but going from an acute sector to the aged care sector, the compliance issues are over the top. They really are quite strict.
Because the assumption is you are a flawed person and you are there to rip these people off, isn't it?
Well, I think that's what it was all brought in about. I mean, aged care has had some rogues in it, and they've been moved on by legislation and government compliance issues, but it is hard to work within the framework. You know, in the acute sector, yes, we could do something and it might injure somebody and you might get sued. I can miss out giving you a tablet, get reported, and I could lose my licence. Now, there's human error, it happens. So I think I wasn't aware of regulation and compliance being so heavy. And the compliance, a good thing, but they can come unannounced any time. So it is a little frustrating.
With regard to I guess, a rant. We may have already given you your opportunity for a rant, but you can repeat it if you wish.
Yeah.
What would the rant be?
Oh, look, I think the rant, as I've said before, these people have been worthwhile citizens in our community. Either, as I've said, they've served in the army or they've done great community things. For no reason of their own, they've found themselves in need of care, and I'm not being rewarded for the care I give them. I mean, you know, we get paid by the government, subsidised by their pension, and it's not a lot of money. To be honest, and I don't want to talk financial, but if you're bedridden and had a stroke and I've got to do everything for you, I'm lucky if I'm getting $200 a day. And that means I've got to do everything for you. Now, that's not a significant amount of money. And I think, you know, I understand the government's got its budget constraints and aged care's growing, but at the end of the day, we need to do something about looking after the elderly. Mm-hmm. I think as citizens, and maybe it's an Australian cultural thing, that I tend to think the way we look after our elderly is the way we should be respected. And that's not really happening.
No. No.
You know, childcare, there's regulations and people are using childcare, that's all fine and dandy, but aged care, they're vulnerable, they need help, and we're not being rewarded.
And respect.
And yeah, I agree, very wholeheartedly.
This industry of health services is the coast's largest industry.
True.
Is there a cluster around the aged care that you guys constantly talk, or?
Yes, the CEOs get together on a monthly basis and we talk about industry issues. The biggest issue that we face is probably employment, and I've spoken about our relationship with TAFE, and the other aged care facilities are taking that on. One of the other things that we're sharing in the aged care sector is education. We've all got to do mandatory training, compulsory training. We're trying to get a group together to look at that. So they're little bits. Are we looking at the bigger picture in development or what needs to happen for aged care? Probably not. We have informal discussions with the acute sector, because the acute sector gets blocked up with elderly people that they need to move on. So we're trying to work with them there. There's probably more that we can do in that regards, because there is, you're right, there's a fair bit of employment on the coast that relates to health and aged care services.
We have something called REDES, which is a regional employment, you know, the plan. And it looks at strategic decisions to be made against categories. Now, healthcare needs those strategic decisions made. Is there enough lobbying going on?
Probably not. Probably not. From our sector, no. No, probably not.
And where does your sector depend? Where does the investment in your sector come from?
Well, I think that's one of the issues. There's demand because the population is ageing. Gosford has a very high percentage of people over 75. The Woiwoi Peninsula is even double that. Yes, there's the demand, but I suppose it goes back to those business issues. Is there enough land? Is there going to be enough return? Are the banks going to lend you money? Is it a worthwhile proposition to go into? And as I've said before, because the government's curbing funding, those sort of things, you're not going to get the returns.
It appears to an outsider here, it appears that that's stalled. There is no development in that space.
Yeah, and the current reforms that the Commonwealth's talking about, it's probably limited that development opportunity, because it's still unknown what will happen with bonds for aged care or development, what's going forward. So, you know, yes, we need to build a new facility. Yes, we've got the money, but until the reforms are finalised and we know what's actually happening, we won't be going ahead and doing that, because there could be risk. And being a community organisation, we've got to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the community.
And manage that.
Yeah.
Okay. What will it take to make aged care an economic driver engine here on the coast?
Well, first of all, aged care, and if I was a private developer, the returns for your investment would be next to nothing. So it really is the not-for-profit sector that has the community mind and probably can operate with lower margins than those in the profit sector to be able to go ahead and develop. There is limited opportunities for us because we need land. Approval processes could be hard through local government or Commonwealth because the beds are restricted at the moment. I think the other thing that we face is that whatever price we're going to get paid for the care is limited by government. So by adding up all of those things, and if we worked in a commercial world, the return on investment wouldn't be there. But community organisations like us are looking at that because that's part of our philosophy or our constitution is to do something for the community and put back into the community. But the returns aren't there. So therefore, that's why there's not a lot of growth in aged care. And as I said previously, the current reforms are restricting what we can and can't do because there's too much unknown.
So you use the phrase limited growth or not much growth. I don't see any growth. Is there are there extra beds being created?
No, there's not. To be honest with you, there's not, because the government's agenda, and I hope to go back, is about community care packages. There is growth in community care packages. There is growth in looking after people at home, and the government is funding that. I'm not in that field. I'm in bricks and mortar and beds. I cannot access the community packages. Other providers are doing that. So there's growth in that area, because to be honest with you, it costs less to provide the care in the community than it does in a facility like mine, but the care needs are greater.
You do, okay. If we go back to, I guess, cultural change now, and we are indeed a little less multicultural here on the coast, but it is evolving.
Yeah, look, for our networks with aged care services, our colleagues in Sydney where there's more multicultural, they have those issues. There is ethnic specific aged care facilities, but here on the coast, I'll be honest with you, because of the predominantly Anglo-Saxon population, that's the population we look after, because it's community.
Indeed.
And those facilities in the metropolitan areas would have their own different diverse issues that they have to face, whether it's employment or residents with cultural differences.
Thank you for your time.
Well, that was easy.
There you go. No pain, no scars.
That's all right.
Yeah.